of 1 Samuel 23. I want to emphasize again that our study guide is designed for our home use in preparing for the lesson so that we can all discuss things, and especially things that we're interested in more than others, or if we have questions about. So I'm not using the study guide so much during class because there is so much to cover in our narrative. And so what I would like for us to do is to just continue the narrative, but we can refer to this. But primarily this is for our home use so that we can know ahead of time the things that are most important and fill out the questions in there and so forth. Having said that, let's go to chapter 23 just for a little background here. How many times has Saul tried to kill David to this point?
Recorded.
How many times? 3. 3 attempts with a spear to pin him to the wall. How many times has Saul tried to kill Jonathan? Once, after pretty much cursing him out, and tried to kill him, his beloved son Jonathan. Now, it's interesting, Jonathan stays loyal to Saul and continues to be with the army and to fight battles. But at the same time, he's an advocate for David. And so he has tried to reassure David. So the next thing you'll remember is that Saul's attitude goes like this. He repents and then he goes after David again. He repents and he does it again. He even says in today's lesson, he says some marvelously positive things about David. And he even acknowledges, you're going to be king. And you think at that point, okay, this is going to have a peaceful, calm, good ending, but it doesn't, because Saul comes right back at him. And so this is that distressing spirit that we've talked so much about. The distressing spirit from God that Saul is having all these unhinged behavior traits. And so look at chapter 23 for just a moment. This is all just a quick review. After the 85 priests were murdered by Saul, including the high priest, and only Abiathar escaped. Then David goes to rescue the city of Keilah. And you'll remember we talked about this last week. The city was gated and it was a good place to become trapped. So while he was there, he asked for the ephod from Abiathar, and David asked God for advice. Are these people going to be loyal? First of all, he said, is Saul coming? Yes, Saul's coming. Are the people going to turn me in? Yes, they are. So David escapes, and Saul thought he had him trapped. Okay, that's what happened in chapter 23. Go with me now to chapter 24. Where we ended the lesson last week, in the wilderness of Ziph, the people in the wilderness were ready to give up David to Saul. They were loyal to Saul. And they had a discussion with him and said, we know where he is. He's here in this wilderness of Maon. He's here. You can take him. And so Saul, in talking to them, said, now be careful, because I understand he's very what? He's very crafty. David is very crafty, so let's be sure that we know what we're talking about here. And just when Saul and his army are ready to pounce on David, and this is where we ended our class last week, what happened that hindered Saul from continuing after David? Loosen up now. Remember what happened? The Philistines attacked. And word came to Saul, the Philistines are attacking again, so he had to leave this pursuit of David and go back and fight the Philistines. So David lived another day. Now you'll recall earlier that Jonathan has interceded on David's behalf several times. And you'll remember at one point, after Jonathan told him, you're going to be all right, David said, as the Lord lives, as my soul lives, there is but what? Y'all are frozen today. There is but one step between what? Between me and death. David was on the run. David was afraid. So now we come to a very interesting story. Let's go to chapter 24. In the wilderness of En-Gedi, it's also spelled E-I-N Gedi or Ein Gedi. This is about 35 miles southeast of Jerusalem. It's desert country. It's rocky country. It is on the rim of the Dead Sea. It's on the western rim of the Dead Sea, about 600 feet above the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea is below sea level, has no outlet. That's why it's so salty and it's called the Dead Sea, and you know all that. This wilderness of En-Gedi is beautiful, but it is forbidding. It's rocky. It's desert, but there is an oasis there. There are springs and there are waterfalls still to this day. 35,000 acres. It is now a nature preserve in Israel. 1 million people a year go there and view the caves, the waterfalls, and the pools. And it's an oasis. There's a lot of greenery there, and there's mountain goats everywhere. They're like squirrels in Tennessee. They're like deer in Fairfield Glade. They're everywhere. And they're similar to our mountain goats, only their horns are straight up and they're a little bit leaner, and they climb on the rocks. And so when you go look at videos of En-Gedi today, you'll see them everywhere, just jumping around on the rocks. The name En-Gedi means spring of the wild goats. That's what it means. So David escapes there to En-Gedi. There's a cave there, the cave of En-Gedi. Still there, and people still visit it. It's a shrine because everyone knows the story. This cave is fairly large and fairly deep. It's over 100 feet deep. There's been archaeological diggings come from that cave that predate David 1,000 years. So it was a place where people went into and left things behind and drew things maybe on the rocks or whatever. So that brings us to the story here, the cave of En-Gedi. David and some of his men, not all 600, they couldn't all get in there. But David and some of his men are in the recesses of this cave. And then what happens? Saul comes in. Saul has 3,000 soldiers with him. Now this is a very rocky, hilly terrain. The Bible speaks of the road being on the road. Well, it wasn't a road like we know it. It was a path. It was a trail through this area. And so Saul needed to relieve himself. Now, whatever you want that to mean, that can mean that. He stopped and needed to relieve himself. He goes into the cave. We don't know what he needed to do. Maybe he just needed to take a nap. Maybe he needed to relieve himself physically. Maybe he needed to bathe. Maybe he needed to cool off. But anyway, Saul goes into the cave and he doesn't know what? That David's in there. David doesn't know Saul has come in. This is a great story. I'm trying to kill you, David, but I don't know you're in the cave. And so here they are in close proximity. And no doubt Saul had a few men with him. Everybody, Abner was probably there, you know, he's the commander of the army. Everybody else is probably outside, scattered in the hills, and David's men are somewhere out there as well. It's not that big a cave, but 100 feet's pretty deep. And so, David's men say, this is God giving you your enemy. You can kill him. And what did David say? God forbid that I should harm or kill the Lord's anointed. It's not the last time he's going to say this. And so, instead of attacking and killing Saul, and so we got to read into the story a little bit here. Either Saul has fallen asleep or God has caused Saul to be in a stupor, some kind of a daze. A little bit later in another story in a similar setting, God is going to bring a deep sleep on Saul and his men. Again, the power of God, the sovereignty of God is working all the way through this. But in whatever state he was in, David could have killed him. in the cave of En-Gedi, and all this would be over. He said, no, I won't do that. So what did he do? He cut what? The corner of his robe and took it. And Saul didn't know it. So again, he was either asleep or God had put him into a stupor, but the corner was cut off. And even then, David regretted doing that. He was sorrowful that he had done that to the king, God's anointed. Do you see here the character of David? A man after God's own heart. He even felt bad. He felt guilty that he had slipped in and cut the corner of the king's robe.
Yeah, but that was, I get it, but that was the only way he could prove to Saul, I had the chance.
Yes. It was genius. It was a genius thing to do. Again, God. God in all this. We don't want to take away from David, but we got to remember David's a human being. He just ate the showbread, which he should not have done. He's told 2 lies, which we discussed. The Bible doesn't, commend us in lying, but sometimes lies are told in order to spare lives and whatever. So at this point, this is what's happened in the cave of En-Gedi. Saul doesn't know it. David's feeling remorseful about it. He has cut the corner of the robe. Now, what happens next?
Saul gets mad and kills all the priests.
Well, actually, he's already done that. He killed all the priests earlier because Ahimelech helped David. Didn't help him as much as Saul was told that he helped him. So they're already dead. They're already dead. That's happened prior to this. So what happens now? The corner's been cut. There's some men with David in one end of the cave and Saul's at the other end of the cave. And what's the next thing?
He confronts Saul and kneels down to him and shows homage and tells him what he done.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of the story. I could have killed you, but I didn't. So David goes apparently, and correct me if I'm wrong because I'm telling a lot of narrative here, but apparently David left the cave first somehow or other, and he was waiting, and Saul leaves the cave, and David, has the robe, the corner of the robe. So let's look at some of these verses here. And this Bible is such small print. So let's go down to verse 7. Verse 7 of chapter 24. So David restrained his servants with these words, the words that, about the robe. He wouldn't let them bring any harm to Saul. He restrains his servants with these words and did not allow them to rise against Saul. And Saul got up from the cave and went on his way. Continue reading. David also arose afterward, after Saul went out. He went out of the cave. He called out to Saul, saying, "My Lord the king." My Lord the king, who has tried to kill me with a spear 3 times. My Lord the king, who has 3,000 men seeking my life. David says he's still God's anointed. Isn't that interesting? That's a man after God's own heart. Who anointed Saul king? God did. Remember? God didn't really want this, but he gave in to the people and said, I'll give you a king, and this is what's going to happen. And we've seen these things happen. But he's still God's anointed. And David is still David. The shepherd, the psalmist, the warrior, and soon to be king. Has the piece of the robe. So let's read a little further. My Lord the king, and when Saul looked behind him, David stooped with, look at this, he stooped with his face to the earth and bowed down to Saul. And David said to Saul, why do you listen to the words of men who say, indeed, David seeks your harm? Look, this day your eyes have seen that the Lord delivered you today into my hand in the cave, and someone urged me to kill you, but my eye spared you. And I said, I will not stretch out my hand against my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed. I could have killed you. How did this affect Saul? Did he say, you rascal, you should have killed me because I'll surely get you now? Did he say that? Did he repent again? He did. This constant ebb and flow of his intentions is very interesting because all of this works on his conscience. And so let's look and see what he told David. So look down to...
Before we get there,
yes, sir.
Before we get there, verse 16, Saul lifted up his voice and wept. You know, so it's having that.
It's touched him. It has. And then look at verse 16 and following in chapter 24. So it was when David had finished speaking these words to Saul that Saul said, is this your voice, my son David? Saul lifted up his voice and wept. Just what we just heard. Then he said to David, now look at this, you are more righteous than I, for you have rewarded me with good, whereas I have rewarded you with what? Evil. And you have shown this day how you have dealt well with me. For when the Lord delivered me into your hand, you did not kill me. For if a man finds his enemy, will he let him get away safely? Therefore, may the Lord reward you with good for what you have done to me this day. And this is the kicker right here. And now I know indeed that you shall surely be what? King. And that the kingdom of Israel shall be established in your hand. Therefore swear to me by the Lord that you will not cut off my descendants after me, and that you will not destroy my name from my father's house. And David said, okay. And Saul turns right around and goes after him again, the distressing spirit from the Lord. We must see God's hand working through all of this. Any comments or questions before we move on to today's lesson? That's all recovering last week's lesson. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think that at this point David truly thought there was going to be any good way out of this?
It's a good question. We can't get into his heart. He said, there's only a step between me and death. L.A.
Well, I think the answer would be that David did not go with Saul after this encounter. He went a different way because he still don't trust him.
It's a good point. That is an excellent point, L.A. They went their separate ways.
Yeah.
I don't think David felt safe at this point. Now, later on, David is going to be urged to kill Saul again. And he said, in due time, God will take care of Saul. Isn't that beautiful? He even predicted, he said, in due time, he'll fall in what? Battle. He will fall in battle. In due time, God will take care of Saul.
I was just going to say something else that might be in play with David is, as is shown here, his love for Saul. He knows before he can become king, Saul's going to have to die.
Yes.
You know, so he's
And he doesn't want to be the one that does that.
right.
He does not want to assassinate the king. Other comments before we go to chapter 25? Well, this is where today's lesson starts, so I'm going to really get fast here. And let me say this. We are going to finish. There are going to be times when we speed up, and there are going to be sections that we'll just kind of leap over. But Lord willing, if we meet through our term, we will get to David's anointment as king and how he served and how he died. We'll get there. Next week, let me say this before we get into chapter 25. Next week, we'll be in West Tennessee. Elon's going to teach next week, but he's not going to... Elon's not going to teach about David. He's prepared a lesson to teach about the Lord, his death, his crucifixion. Is there something you want them to read before next week?
Mark 15 and Luke 24.
There you got it. Mark 15. That's your study guide for next week. Mark 15 and Luke 24. And then, Lord willing, on the 17th, we'll be back in East Tennessee. And then we'll pick up here. So we got to finish chapter 25. How much time we got, Doug?
You have about 14 minutes.
Oh, we're in good shape. Thank you. This story here is short, chapter 25. And it's the rest of our list will catch us up. Who are the characters in chapter 25? New characters. Nabal, his wife Abigail. I've always thought that was a beautiful name. A lot of people cut it short and say Abby. I think
David and
Abigail
10
is
young
beautiful.
men. David and 10 young men.
David and young men. And tell me in a few words, what kind of man is Nabal?
A scoundrel.
He is a scoundrel.
Scrooge.
I think you've used that word before. You wouldn't call Jim a scoundrel.
I haven't, but you know.
What is a scoundrel? That's a term we're familiar with.
Well, he's a Scrooge.
A Scrooge, never smiling, always negative. What else?
Can't be trusted.
Can't be trusted. A scoundrel can't be trusted. A scoundrel lies and cheats and is rude, is mean-spirited.
Why did Abigail marry such a man?
Well, you know, that happens to a lot of us men. We get these beautiful, sweet women. I don't know. Is it God's will? I don't know.
Arranged marriages.
Arranged marriages.
Well, and they didn't have any choices back then like we do now.
No.
She did what she was.
Kathy hit the nail on the head, and you've been so many years in a country where this happens every day. Arranged marriage.
Slingshot wedding.
You tried to. I'm sorry, what?
Slingshot wedding.
Slingshot weddings, yes. Well,
Mickey, I particularly like Abigail is my favorite woman in the Bible.
she's awesome.
Mainly because she says what's on her mind.
Yes.
She calls her husband a fool, which in that day and time in that particular society is kind of dangerous to do.
Yes. And that time, really dangerous to do. He was a scoundrel. His name means foolishness or folly. That's what his name actually meant in the language of that day. So he's a bad man. Have you ever known anybody like that? If you live long enough, you're going to know people that are this mean. I've run across a couple that are just make your blood cold. They're just that rude and that you can't trust, and that they will cheat you out of your last dime. Okay? These people still exist. She was not only beautiful, Elon, she was a woman of great understanding. Alan preached a sermon a couple years ago about this chapter. Do you remember? Does anybody remember the sermon? It was really a good story because he brought out to us in the sermon all the positive things about Abigail and the evil things about Nabal. So let's reduce we got about 10 minutes left. Let's reduce it to its lowest terms. How rich is Nabal? Very rich. 3,000 what? Sheep. 1,000 goats. And no telling what else. He lived in Maon, but his business was in Carmel. And Carmel's 9 miles from Bethany. It's close to Jerusalem. And remember, Jerusalem is still not a holy city. At this point, Jerusalem is not even occupied by the Israelites, which is interesting. That happens later. But he's there in Carmel with his men, and they're doing what? Shearing sheep. And so David and his men encounter them there in Carmel. And do what? According to Nabal's men, they were like a what? They were like a wall, Beth. They were like a wall before them. They were there to visit, to share, to protect. It was all very positive. They didn't molest anybody. They didn't hurt anybody. David's men didn't, and they didn't take one thing from Nabal's men. So there was this positive relationship, a meshing there. And so that happened. And David's men are ready for a feast. Bible doesn't tell us exactly what type of feast, but there's a feast coming up. They don't have any food. They're on the run. Food and water, that's why he went to En-Gedi, was water. En-Gedi was an oasis in a desert area. Still is today. And so he sends these men. David sends these men to inquire with Nabal for what? Some food. And they tell Nabal, you know, we were with your men, excuse me. We were with your men, we didn't harm them, we got along well, we protected them, we didn't take anything, and now we would like to ask this favor of you. Very nicely done. David sends a group to petition Nabal. So what does the scoundrel say?
Who is this son?
Who is David? Who is this son of Jesse? There's a lot of servants out there running away from their masters. Who is this guy? He reviles David. These men spoke David's words. This was David's words to Nabal. No, I'm not going to give you anything. Who are you? I don't even know who y'all are. Even though he was told about the positive things that happened. So how did David respond? Get your what? Get your swords, Elena. Every man get his sword. He had 600 men. He left 200 behind to look after supplies, and he took 400, and they go to do what?
Wipe them out.
They're going to wipe them out. David is mad. Was this a good thing for David to be this angry? No. Again, David's human. And his desire here is to go kill them. He wasn't going to leave a one of them alive. So Nabal's servants come back and they're scared. And they know. And they even tell Abigail, you know he is a what? They told Abigail, the men, Nabal's men said, you know he is a scoundrel. And he can't be trusted. And you know there's trouble coming. So what does Abigail do? This is why Elon thinks she's maybe the most beautiful overall woman in the Bible. What does she do? She gets not just some food, she gets lots of food. Many, many pounds of roasted grain. 5 young kids already processed and ready to eat. 100, makes me hungry to hear all this, 100 clusters of grapes. And a huge number of cakes made from figs. I love fig Newtons. I mean, this is good food. And she's taking all of this, but what is her goal? Her goal is to stop this slaughter. Even though she knows her husband's a scoundrel, she wants to protect David. And the interesting part of this story is she knows who David is, but Nabal didn't. She knows David's a man of God. She even knows and tells David, I know you're going to be king. Isn't that interesting? Her understanding was that deep. She knew things that her husband wouldn't even consider. She takes all this food and she meets David and she falls down before him. And she says, please take this gift because we need to stop this slaughter. She's doing David a great favor. David is about to sin. He's about to take vengeance over some food. And she says, don't do this. She falls down on her face and she bows down before him and salutes him. And she begs him not to do this thing. Did you have a comment? I used Fig Newton's tongue in cheek. I'm sure they were big fruitcake looking things loaded with figs. If I live next to you and you have a fig tree, you better put a fence around it because I love fresh figs. I really love fresh, ripe figs.
5 minutes.
Great. 5 minutes is all we need, and we'll be ready for Elon next week, and then we'll pick up with chapter 26. And this conflict with Saul and David is going to just keep going. It's going to keep going. So the end of this story is David heeded the advice of Abigail. She knows he's going to be king. So they do not. I'm sorry I ran you off. They did not have this slaughter. There was no slaughter. So she don't tell Nabal right away. He comes home and does what? He gets drunk. Surprise, surprise. They have this big party and Nabal's drunk. She waits till the next day to tell him how all this is played out. And by the way, most important part of this story is she looked out for other people. She protected David. She saved David from doing something horrible. It's a great story.
Well,
And
she saved the people of her house.
she saved all of her people. She didn't really care about Nabal. She knew he was no good. She knew he was no good. So she waits until the next day. So the next morning, he's got a hangover. He's been drunk. She tells him. And what happens? Good question. He just turns to stone. I read a commentary that said, he had a stroke and it took him 10 days to die. That's not what happened. God killed him after 10 days. God killed him. He didn't die of natural causes. The Bible says God killed him, took his life. But he was struck and became, I want to say, in a catatonic state. He became like stone. And because I worked my way through college in a state psychiatric hospital, all 4 years, 4 to 12, I've seen at least 2 patients in a full catatonic state, and it is horrible. It's usually associated with severe schizophrenia. It's a horrible thing to see because they are like a stone. You can yell, scream, try to scare them. You can pinch them. You can slap them. They're like stone. They're catatonic. This is what happened to Nabal. 10 days later, he's gone. David loves Abigail. And this is where we're going to end the story, but we can't talk about it. We don't have time, but we got to talk about it in 2 weeks. He says, I want her for what? My wife. And she sends servants and proposes to Abigail. And she accepts. And so she comes and she becomes his wife. Well, I thought he was already married. He was. He was. And not only did he take Abigail to wife, but he took another woman, Ahinoam, to wife. So he's got 2 in addition to Michal, who, by the way, we're going to find out Saul took her back. Saul took her back and gave her to another man. So he's got 2 wives here. He's going to have more. So we're going to open our discussion in 2 weeks about why did God allow this polygamy to go on with David, a man after God's own. It's a really enduring question and one we want to start our class with. We're out of time. Thank you for your participation.